Hello, my wonderful. Welcome to my live stream. And in today's live, we're going to be sharing a wonderful story. Just stay tuned. What will you do if the love of your life, the most precious thing in your life, is jealous of your success? This is a wonderful and interesting story. Okay, let's go. Isaac sat on the edge of the bed, his thoughts drifting in and out of focus. He stared blankly at the reflection of the room and the mirror, barely recognizing the space that he had once shared with his wife, Daisy. It was late in the night, but sleep eluded him. Every time he closed his eyes, he could feel the heavy presence of something unspoken and unsettling discomfort that had grown over the past few years. Adaise's success has become a suffocating weight on his chest, one he didn't know how to manage. It wasn't always like this when they first met. Isaac had been the shining star of their relationship. He had a good job at an engineering firm, and his future seemed full of promise. Adaise, a brilliant woman with boundless energy, had been working in a modest position at a tech company. They were young and in love, with dreams of building a beautiful life together. Isaac had always imagined himself being the breadwinner, the one steering their household towards success. But life had other plans. Adaise's career in technology took off, and soon she was being promoted faster than either of them expected. She worked tirelessly, innovating and networking, and before Isaac could fully grasp what was happening, she became a senior executive. It wasn't just her professional title that changed, their lifestyle did too. They moved into a larger house and Adaeze started attending high-profile events with CEOs and investors. Isaac, meanwhile, had plenteous. He remained in his mid-level position, watching from the sidelines as Adaise's career skyrocketed. The disparity between their career grew, and so did the distance between them. While Isaac had once been proud of his wife's accomplishments, that pride slowly gave way to resentment. He began to feel overshadowed, emasculated even. He no longer felt like the man he had imagined himself to be. It wasn't Adaise's fault, Isaac told himself repeatedly. She hadn't changed who she was. She still loved him and cared for him deeply. But her growing influence and success made him feel inadequate. They were invited to dinners with powerful people, conversations full of business jargon and financial forecasts that Isaac found himself increasingly lost in. He felt small next to her and her colleague. It wasn't just the dinner or the event. Adaise's success was everywhere. Their house was filled with reminders of her achievements, awards of the masterpiece, framed articles featuring her in magazines, from conference where she had spoken as a keynote speaker. Isaac tried to be supportive, but the more he celebrated her, the more he felt like he was losing himself. As the months passed, Isaac's frustration turned inward. He stopped attending Adaise's work events, making excuses about being tired or needing to work late himself. He pulled away emotionally, finding solace in anything that could distract him from the growing gulf between them. He immersed himself in sports, spent longer hours at the office, and met friends for drinks more often, anything to escape the growing feeling of inferiority. Adaeze noticed the change in her husband, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what was wrong. She missed the easy conversations they used to have, the way Isaac used to look at her with admiration. Now, there was a coldness between them, a silence that filled the room even when they were sitting together. She tried to bridge the gap by planning trips, dinners, and surprises, but Isaac never gave in. One evening, Adaeze returned home from a particularly successful business trip where she had closed a major deal. She was bubbling with excitement, eager to share the news with Isaac. As she recounted the details of her trip, Isaac barely looked up from his phone. His disinterest was palpable. Isaac, are you even listening? Adeze asked, frustration creeping into her voice. Isaac sighed, putting his phone down with a heavy tongue. Yes, I heard you. Another big win. Congratulations. Adeze's smile faltered. There was something in his tone that felt off. What's going on? You haven't been yourself lately. Isaac hesitated. How could he put into words the tangled mess of emotions inside him? He wasn't sure he could explain it in a way that didn't make him sound petty or jealous. I am fine, Adeze. Just tired from work. But Adeze wasn't convinced. You don't seem fine. Is there something bothering you? You've been distant and I feel like we are drifting apart. Isaac's throat tightened. She had hit the nail on the head, but he wasn't ready to have that conversation. Not yet. I am just stressed, that's all. Adeze looked at him, searching his face for answers, but found none. She wanted to push further, to dig into what was really bothering him. But something held her back. Maybe he needed space. Maybe it was just a phase. She decided to let it go for the moment. Over the next few weeks, the tension between them grew. Isaac found himself becoming increasingly irritable. Small things began to annoy him. Adeze working late, her constant phone calls with colleagues, her travel schedule. He felt invisible in their home, overshadowed by her larger-than-life presence. Every achievement of hers felt like a reminder of his own stagnation. One day, Isaac's frustration boiled over. He had come home early from work, only to find the house empty once again. Adeze has left a note on the kitchen counter at a business meeting. Be back late. Love you. Isaac crumpled the note in his hand, anger flaring inside him. Business meeting, he muttered under his breath. It was always about business with her. He poured himself a drink, the bitterness in his heart matching the burn of the alcohol as it slid down his throat. When Adeze finally returned that night, she found Isaac sitting in the dark, a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the table in front of him. Isaac, what's going on? She asked, concern ache on her face. Isaac looked up at her, his eyes cold. I am tired, Adeze. Tired of always being second to your career. Adeze's heart sank. She had feared this moment, but hearing him say the words aloud was a punch to the gut. What do you mean? You know I've been working hard, but it's for us, for our future. For us? Isaac laughed bitterly. It doesn't feel like it's for us. It feels like it's for you. You are off building your empire while I am stuck here watching from the sideline. That's not fair, Isaac, Adeze said, her voice trembling. I've always supported your career. I've never asked you to take a back seat. But I am in the back seat, Isaac snapped, rising to his feet. Every time you come home with another promotion or another deal, it's a reminder that I am not where I want to be. I am not the man I thought I would be. Adeze's eyes filled with tears. She had no idea that Isaac had been carrying this burden of resentment for so long. I never meant to make you feel that way, she whispered. I thought we were in this together. Isaac shook his head. his anger embling as quickly as it had come. He felt exhausted, both physically and emotionally. "I don't know anymore," he said quietly. "I just know that I can't keep feeling like this." Aditi sat down, her hands trembling. "Isaac, I love you. I don't want my success to come between us." "I love you too," Isaac said, his voice breaking, "but I don't know how to fix this." The conversation hung in the air, heavy and unresolved. Neither of them knew what to say next, so they sat in silence. Two people who had once been inseparable, now struggling to find their way back to each other. Hello, my wonderful viewer. Thank you for sticking in. Thank you so much for always watching my video, and I appreciate you for coming through for me this night. So let's continue with our story. This is just the beginning of the story. In the days that followed, Isaac and Ade's conversation replay in Isaac's mind over and over again. The emotional distance between them had only widened the more Isaac thought about his frustrations. The more he realized that they weren't just about Adese's success, it was about his own lack of progress. He felt stuck, as though his career and ambitions had been swallowed whole by her mental risk. Adese, on the other hand, couldn't shake the feelings that their marriage was slipping through her finger. She had worked so hard to achieve her dreams, but never at the cost of her relationship, or so she had thought. Now, she felt guilty for every late night meeting, every trip she had taken without him. How had things gotten so out of balance? One evening, Isaac returned home from work and found Adese in the living room, a travel suitcase open on the floor beside her. His heart sank. "Are you going somewhere?" She looked up at him, her eyes red from crying. "I have a work trip to Singapore tomorrow. I was going to tell you, but I didn't know how." Isaac clenched his fist. Another trip? Another reminder of how their life have divided? "Do you even care about what's happened between us, Adese? How can you think of leaving at a time like this?" Adese stood, her voice quavering. With emotion. "Of course I care, Isaac, but I can't just walk away from my job. I've worked so hard to get here, and I'm trying to balance everything. But I feel like nothing I do is enough for you anymore." "Because it's not about you leaving or staying," Isaac snapped, his voice rising. "It's about the fact that I don't matter to you anymore. Your career is the only thing you care about." Adese was turned into silence. His words cut deep, sharper than anything he had ever said before. For a moment, she considered cancelling the trip, putting everything on pause for the sake of their marriage, but part of her resented the idea. She had sacrificed so much to get where she was. Couldn't Isaac see that? "I'm going on this trip, Isaac," she finally said, her voice steady now. "But when I get back, we need to have a serious conversation about where we are headed." Isaac stared at her, his mind racing. He wanted to argue, to make her stay, but the words wouldn't come. He watched as she packed the rest of her things, feeling more helpless than ever before. When Adese left the next morning, The house felt unbearably empty. Isaac wandered from room to room, installed in a house. He tried to distract himself by throwing himself into work, but even that felt meaningless now. He was no longer passionate about his job. He was just going through the emotion. Meanwhile, Adesi's trip was success as usual. She landed another major deal, and her company stocks saw as a result. But even as the congratulations poured in from her colleague, Adesi felt hollow. None of it seemed to matter without Isaac's support. What was the point of all this success if her marriage was falling apart? She returned home a week later, unsure of what to expect. The tension between them had reached a boiling point before she left, and she wasn't sure if Isaac had cooled off or if things had only gotten worse. Isaac was home when she arrived. He was sitting at the kitchen table, a stack of paper, a sack of paper in front of him. Adese noticed they were divorce documents. "What is this?" she asked, her voice shaky as she pointed to the paper. Isaac didn't look up. "I don't know how else to fix this, Adese. I don't know who we are anymore." Adese's heart pounded in her chest. She had feared things were bad, but not this bad. "Isaac, we can't just end this. We have to fight for our marriage." Adese, Isaac finally looked up at her, his eyes dried and full of sorrow. "I've been fighting for years, but I'm tired, Adese. Tired of feeling like I'm less of a man because I can't keep up with you." Adese's anger flared. "This isn't about keeping up with me, Isaac. It's about us supporting each other, building a life together. I never asked you to compete with me." "It doesn't matter if you ask," Isaac said bitterly. "It's how I feel." They argued late into the night, rehearsing the same grievances, the same frustration. Neither of them could offer a solution that felt right. Isaac's resentment ran too deep, and Adese's success was too ingrained in their lives. By the time the argument ended, they were both emotionally drained, no closer, no closer to reconciliation than when they started. For the next few weeks, Isaac and Adese's life lived like strangers under the same roof. They barely spoke, and when they did, it was only out of necessity. Isaac withdrew even further, spending more time at work or out with friends. Adese buried herself in her project, using her work as a distraction from the crumbling state of her marriage. But the silence between them couldn't last forever. One evening, Isaac came home late, clearly intoxicated. Adese was waiting for him in the living room, her face set with determination. "We need to talk," she said firmly. Isaac groaned as he slumped onto the couch. "What now?" "I can't keep living like this," Adese said, her voice breaking. "We are falling apart, Isaac. We need to figure this out, or we are going to lose everything." Isaac stared at her, his eyes bloodshot and weary. "What's there to figure out? You've made it clear that your career comes first." "I've never said that," Adese shouted, her frustration boiling over. "I love you, Isaac, but I can't help that I've been successful. Why is that such a threat to you?" Isaac flinched at her words. He knew deep down that she was right, but his pride wouldn't let him admit it. Instead, he launched out, "Because it makes me feel like nothing. I don't matter. I've never been enough for you, Adese." Adese's shoulders sagged in defeat. "You are wrong. You have always been enough for me. but you can't see that because you are too caught up in your own insecurity. Isaac remained silent, his mind swelling with conflicting emotions. He wanted to fix things, but he didn't know how. All he could see was his own failure reflected in her success. Over the next few days, the silence between them continued, but something was shifting. Isaac began to realize that he needed help, not just for his marriage but for himself. He couldn't continue living in a shadow of Adese's achievements, allowing his resentment to faster and destroy everything he had. One evening, after work, Isaac did something he had been avoiding for years. He sought out a therapy. It was a difficult decision, but he knew he couldn't keep going down the path he was on. If he didn't face his issue head on, he would lose his marriage and possibly himself in the process. The first few therapy sessions were awkward and uncomfortable. Isaac wasn't used to talking about his feelings, especially not with a stranger, but slowly he began to open up. He talked about his frustration, his feelings of inadequacy, and how Adese's success has made him question his own worth. The therapy helped Isaac see that his struggle weren't about Adese at all, they were about him. He has placed his self-worth in his career and his ability to provide, and when Adese surpassed him, he shook his entire identity. The realization was both painful and liberating. Meanwhile, Adese was going through her own process of reflection. She had always been proud of her accomplishments, but now she wondered if she had been blind to Isaac's struggles. Had she unintentionally alienated him by focusing so much on her career? She began attending a support group for women in leadership, where she learned about the unique challenges of balancing a successful career with a marriage. Slowly, Isaac and Adese began to talk again. Their conversations were tentative at first, full of hesitations and apologies, but with each passing day, they found themselves recognizing, recogni- reconnecting. Isaac was still working through his issue in therapy, but he had started to see that his worth wasn't tied to his job or his ability to keep up with Adese. Isaac's newfound perspective didn't make things magically easier, but it gave him a roadmap for understanding his emotions. He began to talk to Adese in ways he hadn't before, openly and honestly. He explained how his resentment had built over time and how he had been internalizing her success as a reflection of his own shortcomings. Adese listened intently, sometimes in shock but always with empathy. One night, after a particularly deep conversation, Adese looked at Isaac with tears in her eyes. "I never knew," she whispered. "I never knew you felt this way. I thought you were proud of me, proud of us." "I am proud of you," Isaac said, his voice soft. "I have always been proud of you, but somewhere along the way, I started to feel like your success meant there wasn't room for mine, like I was losing myself in everything you had achieved." Adese took his hand. "You have never lost yourself, Isaac. You are still the man I fell in love with, the man I want to build a life with. But we both need to figure out how to make room for each other's dream." It was the first time Isaac had heard Adese speak so directly about their future. It gave him hope that they could find a way through a storm, but it wasn't going to be easy. They both knew that as he continued with therapy, making in addressing the deep-seated issue that had been fueling his insecurities. As he making